Hello, everyone, and here I am chit-chatting away with one of my faves. Welcome back to What's Your Story? I am, of course, Kate Murden, founder of Push, and I'm over the moon to have one of my very dear friends and wonderful people, the most brilliant Mr. Matthew Shaw.
Hi.
Hello, who I'd love to do a little introduction to. After battling with a mental health breakdown, Matthew went to the University of Chicago to study a fellowship in making workplaces more mentally friendly. Now a senior BBC journalist, he uses his experience with depression to advocate for mental health and well-being in high-stress workplaces. He's recently started Fundamental, an initiative led by gay and bisexual men who want us all to join the conversation about good mental health. More than anything else, though, I think he's absolutely brilliant, and he's one of my favourite. And I have the pleasure of working alongside him with Push, and he comes and joins the team. So I'm overjoyed that you're with us today, Mr. Shaw. How are you?
Look at the smile you've caused. So I'm very good. Thank you very much. I'm very good. Can you hear me properly? Because I'm going to speak sort of slightly more quietly than normal.
No, that's fine. In your hushed tones.
Yes, as long as you can hear me.
How are things? What's been going on?
I'm really well. I'm really well. Thank you very much. I'm launching Fundamental this weekend as a kind of concept, and work is really hard. Obviously, working at BBC News has been really difficult, and over the past few months, like life has been for everybody. But I'm one of those people that's been going to work, luckily, 2 or 3 times a week for the entire duration of the year. So I feel very fortunate that I've been able to, work alongside people, go to the office, have some routine in my life in this very strange world we're in.
Absolutely. And so I would love, if it's okay with you, I'd love it if you could share a little bit about your story. Obviously, I know it very well. And the whole role of What's Your Story, as you've beautifully already highlighted, what we're going through at the moment. It's a pretty unique time, isn't it? Let's be honest. And I think in this time, personally, I think there's never been a better time to be talking about this stuff. I think that it's never been more needed, and there's never been a greater opportunity to talk about what's going on in the world, and to and for people to be listening and to actually make a little bit of a difference with them. So yeah, could we, and I think at the heart of that is sharing stories. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about yours, if that's okay. Take us back to those days. How long ago was it now? When you kind of had when you first had your experiences of, well, maybe even let's talk about when you first had your experiences with challenges with your mental health.
I mean, when I look back at it now, I appreciate that probably went back as being a 16-year-old potentially. I think around about 16, there was a really interesting moment of my life where exams were coming, and I felt like I couldn't really deal with them. And my mum and dad talk about it more than I do, because I don't know, maybe at 16 you just think this is what life's like, but they just suddenly saw me being very lethargic, lost interest in quite a lot of stuff to do with life. They were really concerned about me, and took me to the doctors, and the doctor just said I probably had hay fever, gave me some antihistamine and pat me out. But those were different times.
What the hell?
But it's difficult to diagnose, and it's always hard for parents who want to do their best but then worry so much about mental health. And I think we live in a society now where parents don't necessarily beat themselves up if their child has a mental health issue and they want to help them. So that is a much better place to be, because you're just something that you want to support your child with. And then again, probably twice in my 20s, I sort of reached, again, it's like lethargy. I've described sometimes mental health issues, or depression in particular, as sort of falling out of love with life. And I normally love life, and I'm one of those really lucky people that really enjoys it. And I enjoy friends and family and work and doing things and meeting people. And I work at BBC News, national news, so I get to see brilliant things and meet brilliant people all the time. So I am having a really good innings. I've had a really great innings. Sorry, I'm having one.
Oh, all right, pop off then.
I'm having a great innings, but then just occasionally I fall out of love with it and myself, which is the best way, I think. And because it's like heartbreak, and which many of us have experienced, which is something that you repair yourself from eventually.
Yeah.
But I think with something like this, when you sort of fall out of love with everything, work, relationships, family, the lot, it's a terrible place to be. And it happened a couple of times in my 20s, but I was a kind of ambitious, young, thrusting producer at the BBC. And also, I would say, probably because I was younger, you can kind of just repair that bit quicker. But then taking us back to 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 2014, 6 years ago, in 2014, I think there was a moment it was just an overwhelming sense of, I've had a background of breaking up from a relationship after 14 years. I was living on my own for the very first time in my life, which is a challenge and not the best place to be. When you're dealing with something like that, work became really difficult. There were lots of big issues at work. I was becoming a middle manager, so I was responsible for other people who I didn't really want to be responsible for. And any middle managers on this line will know that you're getting it from above and below, just people going, that was really hard. And then I did, it's there, it's obvious, but it's hard even for my friends around me to notice it. So I was drinking more and going out more, and I was drinking at home more, and I wasn't exercising, and I wasn't looking after myself physically. All of those things, and perhaps a propensity to not deal with them very well as a person, meant it all just collapsed around me, and I just became sort of an empty shell one day. I just couldn't take anything more. I've described it. It's like a pint of Guinness. You get used to that kind of white head on the Guinness that slightly goes over the rim of the glass sometimes in life. Well, this time it just kept flowing and flowing and flowing. And once that floodgate had gone, all I wanted to do was lay on my whole floor and just wish it all went away. So that was a horrible place to be. And which I never want to return to, obviously. But I've had to understand that potentially is a place that I could go back to. So I need to do everything in my power to ensure that I don't.
Matthew, can I ask you? I'd like to ask you a few questions about that. I think that. So what we've identified there, is very poor mental health, right? Very poor mental health. And, I wonder then if there's something in some of us having a greater predisposition to go to that. For example, Helen Tupper, who I was speaking to this morning, she was saying about how she genuinely feels that she's got very good resilience, right? She's got good resilience of either compartmentalizing stuff, or I think probably on the other side of it, probably having the skills to manage stuff when it comes up. I wonder if there's something in a predisposition to feeling like that. And then, in the event, as it did within your life, things having to deal with more things than normal, and that was the moment when it became overwhelming, because and I have absolutely no issue in sharing this. Similarly, I'm uber conscious, and my mind is a daily management, right? My mind is a daily management, and the time when I was signed off with stress, again, that point became too overwhelming. I don't know, it's something that's ongoing, right? It's not something that's.
I would say there's a huge percentage of us that might have predisposition to not coping with a hell of a lot of stress very well. There are fortunate people whose lives actually might just go along quite nicely, and then something out of the blue whacks them in the face, and it can obviously really affect them, and they may not recover as quick as they probably think they would. So I think I'd like to say we're in the majority, but that's by the by. But probably on the edge of that majority are some people, a sizable amount of people who maybe don't stop themselves, don't seek treatment, don't open up, don't talk, don't recognize it, don't rest, don't stop, all those things, and it just gets worse.
Yeah, and that for me, I think, is the most terrifying place, right? That's the one, actually, you know, there's something in, I know I was, remember I was at Paul Moore, who I referenced earlier, he's one of our speakers tomorrow, you know, and he suffered severely from I believe it was bipolar, and suffered some severe depression. You know, and he almost sees it now as a bit of a superpower, the fact that actually, you know, having been through that, he understands himself better and can manage himself, rather than those people who maybe don't even go there and live with some of those challenging thoughts on, you know, a really day-to-day basis, to the point that it can become quite crippling. I think once you've stepped into it a bit and actually can understand, be more aware of it and manage it, you know, the door's open, right?
Exactly. And I think that if you don't have coping strategies in place, and we've talked about this in some of the work we've done together, I think that you'll find a lot of people have coping strategies in their life they would never dare call coping strategies, because they think everything's fine, but they are coping strategies. They are writing lists on fridges of what the family are doing on a day-to-day basis. They are writing shopping lists so you know what you're getting. They are going for a jog. They are spending every Sunday afternoon getting somebody else to do the washing up while you have a lie down. They're all what you would call coping strategies. And for some of us, I don't think we go there. And once you've got nothing in place, we're just lumps of flesh with a brain in. You know, we can't take it sometimes. And just going back to your earlier point about the kind of person you had on earlier talking about resilience, I think I was lucky enough to speak to somebody who was in the special forces in the US during the Vietnam War, so a veteran. And he and I had quite a heated conversation about resilience, because he's been through horror, and I imagine he's had to kill people in the line of duty, and he just brushes it off and starts again the next day, as he described it. He wakes up, starts again.
Wow.
And I said, well, I could never be like that. But also, can I point out that, you know, you didn't just walk into that job, you were found, you were trained, but more or less you were found. They find the right people, the resilient people, the people that can just think, today is a new day, and tomorrow was yesterday was yesterday, sorry. And I just need to start as I am now and not worry about tomorrow and not worry about what I did yesterday. That's his mantra. I think that's brilliant. I don't think a lot of us can do that.
Wow. I mean, this is a whole different thing, isn't it? But, you know, how much of that is innate versus how much of that is trained, right?
We don't know, do we? The brain is, I think we know more about the universe than we know about the brain and our emotions. And I've spoken to, you know, really, really experienced psychiatrists and people that study this. And, you know, we were only just discovering it. It's like a whole universe in here. And there are whole planets we're still finding, I think, and discovering. Who knows if it's just the way you're built? I think they think there's probably something to do with that. And there's something the way you were brought up, but there's also something with the way you are and what makes people want to be actors. They often say that actors have a greater mental health issues. Well, is that because they're acting and pretending to be somebody else every day? Or is it the fact that they have mental health issues mean that they want to be actors, so they're avoiding themselves? Or are they being actors because they're just particularly gifted at understanding many different things at the same time? All of that. I think that's the best example, I think, in that, you know, great artists tend to have more mental health issues. But which came first, chicken or the egg?
Yeah, I mean, that is interesting, isn't it? I suppose then my question to you, you know, in particular, given the work that you've done on yourself to manage yourself on a day-to-day basis, you know, and then obviously having the conversations that you've had, either when you were at university, when you were studying what organizations can be doing, or more specifically, when you go and meet someone who's been in the special services, you know, and talk about their experiences, you know, what would you say are the tools, are the things that you use on a day-to-day basis to manage your mind? You know, I know for me, I have I work very hard to separate myself from my thoughts, right? Work very, very hard to know or to try and understand that every single thought that come into my head, I don't have to act upon. Not even all the ones that are about chocolate. I mean, beyond that, do I eat the bar of chocolate or not? But the, the point being that having that separation from this thinking, I don't have to go with every single thought that's coming in, has been a very powerful one. Is there anything for you that you particularly use? Any particular tool?
I think what you refer to, I think, is the hardest work of all. So I always have two examples of that. Worrying that the worst thing's going to happen. You've had an email, you think, oh gosh, Tuesday's going to be terrible. So, I have now trained myself to write it down, get a pad out, write down how many times in the past. I could think of examples when Tuesday actually in the end didn't turn out to be horrific. Write down, and you realize that definitely more often than not, probably not even ever has it been intolerably awful, and that you're wasting your time dreading it. It might be a problem, it might be difficult, but I've gone to meetings where I've completely dreaded it, thinking I'm going to be humiliated, and then somebody has stepped in at the last second and resolved the whole issue in one go. That's what happens in normal life. And then if I think that somebody's doing something or going out with someone and I'm feeling left out, which is a problem that many of us face, I sit down and realize, well, no, because last weekend I was out with another friend. What would my friend think of that? Had they seen that on social media? They might have think. Those processes, which you're going through, I think of, but more or less, I'm a producer at BBC News. I produce teams and stories. I basically produce myself, which sounds like I'm being very, very
amazing, Machiavellian.
I'm being very detailed about it, but I plan it. So I plan. If I know I'm going to be out on Thursday, I'm not going to be out on Saturday, probably. And I look after myself in that way. If I know I'm going to have a late night and not asleep as well, probably that Thursday night, I will absolutely ensure that Friday is an early night or Saturday. I've planned it in. I treat myself, and all these things, like, especially if you live on your own. I wouldn't call it date night because that sounds pathetic, but that's what it is. It actually doesn't sound pathetic. Why am I saying it's pathetic? I make the meal I like most in the world. I treat myself. I save a movie for a Saturday. I make an event of it. I light a candle. Honestly,
I get it. But I really get it. I think, you've touched on some really beautiful points there. You touched on that whole thing around planning, is so important. And, as you quite rightly said, you're a producer. You do this planning at work. So why the hell do we not plan our personal lives as well? If you don't plan, you leave space for fuck ups. It's very easy, So actually, it's about putting those plans in. But at the heart of it, it's about how you treat yourself. First and foremost, treating yourself with the care and dedication that you do to others. I'm a complete anxious attachment. I've got a complete anxious attachment style, which means that I will often put others before myself. There's a lot more detail, but in that instance, and and put myself bottom of the list. And I need to get better at that, because actually, that really. I end up then feeling quite resistant about it and quite frustrated about it, but it's my own doing, right? I need to put myself first a lot more.
You can put yourself first. You can put yourself second or third, but don't put yourself at the bottom. Apart from when you really need to. And I think sometimes you've got to. But I think to be kind of relaxed, I have to say, when I say all this, when I do this timetable, I do this planning and I produce myself, I know this sounds like having best of both worlds. If it doesn't work, I don't beat myself up about it as well. If the plan doesn't come to fruition, because then you kind of come to the stage of somebody on the Friday says, let's go to the cinema. And I would go, no, Friday's my staying in thing. I know I always want to grab opportunities. And I try and be as fluid as I can. But I do say no sometimes and make sure that I am looking after myself. I think it might come with age. I know that I have responsibilities at work and I have responsibilities at home. Sorry, I keep looking around.
No, it's all right. No, and I really, really get that. Can I ask you a question? And I'd love to hear this. Do you know that if there are any specific things that have a real effect on your mental health, any particular challenges that you know to be wary of?
I think if I think something's damaging my self-esteem,
Right.
Which I battle with. So if I think there is a potential situation where people are going to think I'm not very good at my job, and if I think there are times where, I don't want to say that people don't like me. What I mean is if there are times where people are having, as I perceive, a better time because I am not there, they're my two flashpoints.
Right.
And
Okay.
And they're barely ever true. But they're still there, and I still have to work on them. And they're kind of what I was saying earlier. They still, and it's not just fear of missing out. It's a matter of why wasn't I included? And the irony being, there could be people involved in that situation who I have not included in some elements of my life myself. And there are irony being, sometimes I have to realize, no, I wasn't particularly good at work this week or on that particular project. I could have done better. But do you know what? I might just admit it and then see what happens to everybody. And more or less, I work in an organization when you say, do you know what? I don't think I did that to the best of my ability. And they will say, thank you for being honest. Let's see what we can do to improve it together, because I am fortunate to work with people that aren't that nasty.
Yeah, interesting.
And I forget that all the time. I think sometimes some of the nicest people at work are sort of out to get me. They're not. They like me. It's strange.
Why do we do this? Why? I mean, I get it. It's our brains. We're looking for danger. We're looking to try and protect ourselves.
We want to be good. I mean, we want to be good. We want to be effective. We want to be. Oh gosh, I'm avoiding using this phrase in this past half hour. We want to be liked, and that not just be liked as a person, but liked and respected. We all want that. We all want to be successful at all the different aspects of who we are. Maybe part of the self-care, as I said, is putting a plan in place that makes you as successful as you can be without being knocked back. But again, I say, if it doesn't quite go right, it's not the end of the world. And there are ways of just learning from it and moving on. Again, I feel like I'm a Miss World contestant now, but I don't really mean that. I mean, don't beat yourself up if it doesn't go quite right. Because if you wrote it down in a book, you'd realize those moments are few and far between.
Well, I suppose it's about having, and we talk a lot about this, right? It's about having those clear goals in the first place. Like, what do I want this to look like, right? So I've got a bit of clarity around that. The next stage around it is making sure that is something that is achievable, right? And it's within my control rather than it being something that's external to that. But then, even in those moments, maybe if you don't achieve that, it's either saying, right, okay, well, I'm going to extend the time period for it, in order for me to then get there. Or the other side of it is like, right, well, what do I learn from this? Because every single time with that power of reflection, some of those failures, as one might deem it, actually can be those greatest opportunities for the learning. I certainly know that is absolutely what's happened in my life, without a shadow of a doubt. That's the thing that's propelled me forward more than anything else.
And also, things that go wrong aren't necessarily just your fault. There's lots of different factors at play, and you've got the role to improve things and make things better. And it might not just be your responsibility, which is a great thing. And then it sounds like I've got it all mastered. I don't. Can I just throw out there? But I just it's really hard to do what we're doing, and it is difficult work, and sometimes it doesn't go right. But I don't know.
I'd love to talk a bit more about Fundamental, if that's okay. Mission of Fundamental, and and obviously I know that you were part of previously another men's group. So I'd like to talk a little bit about Fundamental and its goals, but also maybe some of the stuff that really does come up quite a lot for men that you see. So first and foremost about Fundamental, tell me a bit about that and what it's trying to achieve.
Well, I was involved in I've always been interested in the mental health of men, purely because I've been doing a lot of these events, and they're attended a lot by women, and not so many men. And it's been very difficult to reach men. And I think we need to, because the figures surrounding male suicide are still terrifying, and something I would like to have a go at to stop, to improve, to do something, to have an impact. So, you know, I've always thought that what is it that's turning men off necessarily? It's not just they have to admit there's a problem. It's also because it's hard to share. We don't share as much as perhaps women might share with other women.
Yeah.
I think this is typified by, I did a talk once where a married couple, straight couple, where she said that they'd just had a baby, and what she found so amazing was that actually she didn't really like her mum and sister beforehand, but she has relied on them hugely because they have both had children. One of them obviously have both had children, and they have been a great source of support. Whereas her husband, who has a really close relationship with his father, has never had a conversation with his father about having a child. And it just struck me as that is just odd when you think about it, and actually really sort of sad for all of us that we're not doing that properly. So I thought, how do we have those conversations? So I wanted to sort of like what you do. I just want to loosen it up and make it feel more interesting, more enjoyable, more for your mental health to feel sort of like an aspirational, enjoyable thing to look after, in the way that doing an exercise club or being in a cinema group or playing netball. Something that I didn't want to belittle serious mental health issues.
And you know what I like about that is, you're right. It doesn't always have to be really hard, and it shouldn't have to be really hard. It should just be those moments of coming together to talk about this stuff. You know, interestingly, a friend of mine who goes to AA, and we were talking about it, and he said it went from being something that was simply about being part of his recovery and almost a chore, to being a moment where he could talk about stuff that was going on, you know, and having a group of people in a room where they could openly talk about how they were feeling. And there weren't many moments like that. And actually, if you can replicate those if you can create those communities or curate those communities in the way that you're talking about, you know, you're right. Women can get together and talk like that quite regularly, but I don't know if men have those similar experiences. And to create that is incredible.
So I want to make it fun. And then, you know, I've also come across the fact that for gay and bisexual men or queer men, the mental health issues are even larger, and there is a problem, and suicide rates are higher. Right. And of course, we spend more time together. We're probably more chatty. We're more social as gay men, potentially. But actually, I think those communities are very quickly going, in that there used to be, they weren't just pickup joints, there were pubs and bars and places where you could be together and share stuff and have large friendship groups. I think they've gone. And with all due respect, Grindr is not a replacement for that kind of social grouping. And where are men? We're all going out and having drinks, but we're not in the same way as. I don't like to define these people by their sort of stereotypical characteristics, but straight men go to the pub and talk about football, while gay men might go to a bar and talk about. Well, they might talk about football, to be perfectly honest, but they still don't talk about things that really matter to them. And
but I suppose it's a bonding thing, isn't it? I suppose you know, and I think that was one thing when, you know, during lockdown, when sports were off, people missed that sense of bonding with each other and that connection.
Oh, absolutely. I think you'll find that I think I've read about this, or I've certainly spoken to men that are like five-a-side teams. Actually, they talk more openly on WhatsApp amongst themselves as a group, really openly about mental health. They would never go face to face. So I think to achieve that for gay people as well. And then, of course, I feel like this is my own personal journey I'm making into an organization. But I remember, I've done talks as well where there are just men in the room, and a gay man has spoken about his experience of coming out. And everybody in the room has been fascinated by the story and seen it resonates with them, even if they're not gay. The coming out experience, the handling your identity, being the person you want to be, is something that everyone can appreciate. That process, that challenge, is something that people can understand. And the power that we potentially have, not only for our own community, but for everybody else, is something I want to capture with Fundamental.
And do you know what? That's really interesting, isn't it? So tomorrow we've got Charlie Craggs on, who's transsexual, and I don't know if you've met her, and she's amazing. And she basically, she realized, having been seriously bullied in her life, that actually the way of changing perceptions and destigmatizing this was about sharing her story, which, essentially, people want to know stories. They want to know about each other.
Yeah, because the question, what kind of person am I? That everyone has that.
Yeah.
And it might not be your sexuality. You may not be dealing with homophobia, transphobia, or the way society's designed. You may not have that experience. But but even a white, middle class, public school educated Oxbridge graduate has issues that we can all share with everybody. So that is what we're trying to do. And also what I want to do with Fundamental is, I thought we'd try and start an organization where we start off as gay and we invite other people in as our allies, just to see if that works. Who knows, it might not work, but just as a sort of, why not try it that way around? So for me, diversity is finding that white middle class Oxford come and join us and support us. And I think that can easily happen because there are a lot of nice people out there.
So I have one last question, and that is, from the work that you did previously, in the men's space, what is the one thing that kind of comes up time and time again, that a challenge? I suppose if anyone's listening in at the moment, what's the thing that you hear a lot, and what and then I suppose on the other side of it, what can someone do about that? So either if guys were hearing this and could relate to it, or indeed if a woman was listening to it and thinking about their partner or brother or uncle or whatever that thing might be, what is the stuff that comes up a lot for men as a bit of a challenge?
Because like all human beings, they think, I'm not good enough, I don't know what I'm doing. Every single human being thinks that, and I don't think they admit it. And everyone would turn around and say, no one knows how to be a good father, no one's mastered it, you just do the best you can. No one knows how to be a good boss at work, you just try and do the best you can, and don't measure yourself against other people. That men, I think Instagram affects heterosexual men as much as it affects young gay teens or 20-something women. Again, I'm not trying to intentionally stereotype here, but people just match other people's lives to their own, but men just do it quietly without sharing it and without thinking. There's always a story behind a picture. There's always somebody that's struggling just as much as you are. There's always somebody that feels they're an imposter, because actually that's the common human experience.
Would you argue? Yeah. I mean, that's quite a comfort, isn't it? Knowing that you're comparing your inside with someone's outside, as I often talk about, but knowing that every single feeling that you've got, someone else is having as well. Maybe not Trump, maybe not him. I don't know if he has imposter syndrome.
Do you think he has any form of self-doubt when he gets up?
Feeling? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I guess he falls into the category of sort of Vietnam Special Forces. Maybe he is utterly resilient. I don't want to get
sociopathic? I don't know. Is he sociopathic? Narcissist for sure.
I think if he lost the election, he wouldn't brush it off. So he's a human being as much as the rest of us.
Oh yeah, or he'd just pretend that it didn't happen.
That might be his public
Fake news. Listen, on that note, I have loved this. Like I love every other moment that I have the joy of spending in your company.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed that last part. You know, let's keep this really simple. You know, the stuff that often comes up for men is the not being good enough, as it does for all of us.
Yeah.
And actually, just the kind of talking about it, getting another perspective, getting out of our own heads, just talking about it helps so much. Matthew, where do we find out about Fundamental if we want to? You've got an Instagram?
Yes, which is Fundamental Health UK. Long word, but you'll find it. And the website is www.fundamentalhealthuk.com.
Amazing.
Long name, but you'll find it.
Wonderful. I love you very much.
You too. You look amazing, by the way.
Thanks, babes. I got you here. And I would love to see you very soon. So
yeah, you will do.
Let's go and weave some magic in the world. I would love to see you soon.
Take care and lots of love. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.